My father told him to leave through the back door, as if the love I feel for him were ashamed to be hidden. My name is Chloe, I'm 24 years old, and this is the most painful and beautiful story I've ever lived. A story that began with a smile at university and almost ended with tears at the back door of my house. It all started on a cold September morning at the University of São Paulo. I was late for my comparative literature class, running through the hallways with my blonde hair flying and a stack of books about to fall from my arms. That's when I bumped into him. Marcus. His books scattered on the floor along with mine, creating a little improvised library in the middle of the hallway. When our eyes met, I felt something I had never felt before. His brown eyes had a depth that seemed to tell 1,000 stories, and his smile. God, that smile lit up my whole day. Sorry, he said, bending down to help pick up the books. His voice was deep, gentle, like a warm coffee on a winter morning. It was my fault, I replied, feeling my face heat up. I'm always running around here like it's a marathon. He laughed, and the sound of that laughter was etched into my memory forever. Marcus, he said, extending his brown hand toward mine. Chloe, I answered, feeling an electric current when our skin touched. We found out we were taking the same elective class, and that's how our story began. Marcus studied engineering but had a passion for literature. I was majoring in languages and literature but was fascinated by technology. We were opposites that complemented each other perfectly. Our first conversations happened between classes, then extended to the university cafes, long walks around campus, and finally, hours-long meetings in the library. We talked about everything: dreams, fears, books, music, family. It was when the topic of family came up that I felt the first chill in my stomach. My parents are traditional, I said, nervously fiddling with the ring I wore on my index finger. They came from the countryside, built everything from scratch. They're good people, but sometimes... Marcus looked at me with understanding in his eyes. I get it. My family has its issues too. My dad's worked in a factory for 20 years, my mom is a housekeeper. They've always pushed me to be the best, to open doors they were never able to open. It was impossible not to admire him. Marcus had an inner strength that showed in every word, in every gesture. He talked about challenges as if they were victories, always with his head held high and a determined sparkle in his eyes. 3 months after our first encounter, Marcus kissed me under a tree on campus, with autumn leaves falling around us like golden confetti. It was my first real kiss, the kind that marks your soul and changes everything. I love you, Chloe, he whispered against my lips, and I felt like the whole world finally made sense. I love you too, I replied, knowing it was the purest truth I had ever spoken. We lived our love in the bubble of the university for months. We walked hand in hand through the hallways, studied together in the library, shared dreams and future plans. In that small academic universe, we were just two people in love. But bubbles are fragile, and reality has a cruel habit of bursting them. The first crack came on a Saturday afternoon, when we were leaving the cinema holding hands. A group of acquaintances of my parents saw us, and I noticed the strange looks, the discreet whispers, the furrowed brows. Don't mind them, Marcus said, squeezing my hand tighter. But I already felt the weight of those stares like stones on my chest. The second crack was when my childhood best friend, Sarah, asked me directly, Chloe, are you sure about what you're doing? Do your parents know about this? This. As if our love were a disease, a problem, a mistake. Marcus is not of this, Sarah. He's the man I love. But the question echoed in my mind for days, did my parents know? No. They didn't. For 6 months, I kept Marcus as my most precious and painful secret. I made up excuses for being late, lied about where I was, invented stories about imaginary friends. Every lie was a stab in my own heart because I knew I was being a coward. Marcus never pressured me. He understood, or at least pretended to. But sometimes I caught a sad look in his eyes, a melancholy he tried to hide with smiles. One day it will all be okay, I always said, more to convince myself than to comfort him. I know, he replied. I trust you. That trust tore me apart inside. How can someone trust so much in a person who doesn't even have the courage to introduce him to her family? The storm was building, and I could feel the thunder approaching. Soon, very soon, our bubble would be tested by the devastating force of the prejudice I pretended didn't exist. What I didn't know was that when the time for truth arrived, the pain would be far greater than I ever imagined. Before we continue our story, if you're feeling moved by Chloe and Marcus's journey, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support motivates me to tell more stories that touch the heart. Now, let's continue. The bomb exploded on a seemingly normal Sunday morning. I was having breakfast with my parents in the kitchen of our house in Perdizes, an upper-middle-class neighborhood where I grew up among automatic gates and well-kept gardens. My father, Dr. Roberto Fernandez, a respected surgeon, was reading the newspaper with the same focus he used to perform surgeries. My mother, Lucia, was obsessively arranging cups that were already perfectly aligned. Chloe, my father said without lifting his eyes from the paper, Mrs. Carmen told me she saw you at the mall with a different kind of guy. My blood froze. Mrs. Carmen was our neighbor, an elderly lady whose hobby was watching other people's lives through her living room curtains. Different how? I asked, pretending to be natural while my heart pounded like a military drum. A black man, my mother answered bluntly, putting an emphasis on the word that made my stomach turn. The silence that followed was deafening. I could only hear the ticking of the wall clock and the sound of my own accelerated breathing. Is it true? My father asked, finally looking at me. His blue eyes, just like mine, were cold as ice. Yes, I said quietly. His name is Marcus. He's my boyfriend. My mother dropped her cup. The sound of porcelain shattering on the marble floor echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. For God's sake, Chloe, my father exploded, slamming the newspaper on the table. What were you thinking? I was thinking that I'm in love, I replied, feeling tears start to form in my eyes. Love fades, sweetheart, my mother said as she crouched to pick up the pieces of the cup. Her hands trembled. But the consequences of our choices last forever. What consequences? I asked, rising from the table. Chloe, you don't understand, my father said, running his hand through his gray hair. We have a social position. I have a practice, important patients. Your mother leads the church ladies' club. We can't. Can't what? Have a daughter who loves someone? It's not about love, he shouted, and I had never seen my father shout before. It's about reality. About how the world works. The world is changing, Dad. It is, but not as fast as you think. And in the meantime, we'll suffer, and that young man will suffer too. I ran to my room and called Marcus, crying on the phone. Calm down, my love, he said with that voice that always soothed me. It was expected. They just need time to get to know me. Marcus, you don't understand. They don't want to know you. Difficult weeks followed. My parents tried everything, from emotional blackmail to bribery. They offered to pay for a trip to Europe so I could forget this nonsense. They threatened to cut my allowance. They talked about pulling me out of university. But what hurt the most were the venomous comments disguised as concern. Have you thought about your children? How will they feel not belonging to either side? This boy might be a good guy, but you come from very different worlds. People will always look at you differently, sweetie. Do you want to live like that? Each word was a blade cutting through my confidence, my certainty, my love. Marcus, in turn, was facing pressure from his own family, but for different reasons. That rich girl is going to use you and then toss you aside, his mother, Donna Maria, warned him. People like her don't marry people like us. Son, you're fooling yourself, his father said. When her family finds out, you'll see what it's really like. And he did. Marcus started to notice the stares when we went out together. The conversations that stopped when he approached. The waiters who took longer to serve us. The people who crossed the street when they saw us holding hands. Sometimes I feel invisible, he told me on a cold June night as we walked down Avenida Paulista. Like I only exist when I'm with you, in our private moments. You exist, Marcus. You are real, you are important, you are loved. But is that enough? That question haunted me for days. The worst moment came when we decided to face the situation head-on. We agreed that Marcus would come over for dinner at my house on a Saturday. It would be our chance to show my parents who he really was. I spent the entire week preparing the ground, talking about Marcus, his qualities, his dreams, his intelligence. My parents listened in silence, with expressions like they were being forced to swallow bitter medicine. "All right," my father finally said. "He can come." But there was something in his tone that made me uneasy. Marcus arrived on Saturday at 7 sharp, punctual as always. He looked amazing, in a blue dress shirt and black slacks, with a bouquet of flowers for my mother and a bottle of wine for my father. His shoes were polished, his hair perfectly trimmed, his smile warm and sincere. My heart swelled with pride. How could anyone not love this man? I thought. But when I opened the door, I saw in my parents' eyes something that chilled me to the bone. In that moment, I understood that some battles are lost before they even begin. Dinner was torture disguised as civility. Marcus tried harder than I had ever seen anyone try. He talked about his engineering studies, his plans to pursue a master's degree, his internship at a multinational company. He showed knowledge about art, politics, and economics. He made just the right amount of jokes, complimented the house's decor, and thanked them for every dish served. My parents were polite. Coldly polite. They answered his questions with monosyllables. They made comments that sounded like compliments but carried thorns. "How interesting that you study engineering. It must be hard to find opportunities in your situation. Your father works in a factory? How honest. Manual labor is just as important as intellectual work, isn't it? You speak very well, Marcus. You can hardly tell. I mean, you had a good education." A part of me died with every comment. Marcus kept smiling, but I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched discreetly into fists beneath the table. The tensest moment came when my father asked, "And what are your plans for the future, Marcus? Do you intend to continue, as you are?" "What do you mean, Dr. Roberto?" "Well, you understand. Your career, your life. Do you intend to rise socially?" The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Marcus took a deep breath before replying. "I intend to be happy, sir. To build a family, have a solid career, contribute to society. The same dreams anyone has." Of course, my father said, cutting his steak with more force than necessary. "But you must understand there are obstacles. Especially when mixing different social classes." "Dad!" I exclaimed, unable to stay silent any longer. "No, Chloe, let him speak," Marcus said, looking at me with determination. "Dr. Roberto, are you talking about class differences or color differences?" The silence that followed was deadly. My father slowly set down his utensils, wiped his mouth with the napkin, and looked directly at Marcus. "I'm talking about reality, young man. About the world as it is, not as we wish it were." "And what is the world like, in your opinion?" "It's a world where my daughter will be judged for where she goes, who she marries, what children she has. A world where the two of you will always be seen as different. A world where I'll have to explain to my colleagues, my patients, my community, why my daughter made this choice." "This choice," Marcus repeated, and his voice held a coldness I had never heard before. "Your daughter's love is a choice you feel you have to explain?" Don't twist my words, young man. I'm not twisting anything. I'm trying to understand if you have a personal problem with me, or if the problem is simply the color of my skin. My mother choked on her wine. My father turned red with anger. How dare you imply I'm racist? I never said anything about color. You don't have to, Marcus replied calmly. It's implied in every word, every look, every comment. I stood up from the table, shaking with rage and frustration. Enough. Stop this. Chloe, sit down, my father ordered with the same voice he used when I was a child. No. I'm not going to sit while you humiliate the man I love. We're not humiliating anyone, my mother said. We're being realistic. Realistic? I shouted. You're being prejudiced. We're trying to protect you, my father exploded. Protect you from a life of suffering, of judgmental stares, of closed doors. The only doors that are closed are the ones in this house. Marcus stood up slowly, with a dignity that shattered my heart. Dr. Roberto, Mrs. Lucia, he said firmly, thank you for dinner. But I think it's best if I leave. Marcus, no, I begged, holding his arm. Chloe, it's okay, he said, looking at me with so much love I nearly collapsed right there. My father stood as well. Listen, young man. You seem like a decent guy. But this isn't going to work. You know it, I know it, and deep down, my daughter knows it too. With all due respect, sir, Marcus said, the ones who decide if it will work are Chloe and I. You're wrong, my father replied. The ones who decide are the circumstances. And the circumstances are not in your favor. Marcus walked toward the front door, but my father blocked his way. Where do you think you're going? Through the door, Dr. Roberto. The same one I came in. No. You'll leave through the back. The world stopped. It felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Marcus turned pale, his eyes filled with a pain so deep it made me stagger. Dad, what are you saying? I whispered. I'm saying I don't want my neighbors seeing this young man leaving through the front door of my house. We've had enough embarrassment for today. Marcus looked at me, then at my father, then back at me. I saw the exact moment something broke inside him. All right, he said quietly. As you wish. No. I screamed. Marcus, no. You'll leave through the front door. You enter and leave through the front door. But he was already walking toward the back of the house, his shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of the world. I ran after him, crying uncontrollably. Marcus, forgive me. Please forgive me. He stopped at the back door and looked at me one last time. There was so much love and so much sadness in that look, I thought my heart would stop beating. There's nothing to forgive, Chloe. You did nothing wrong. Then why does it feel like I lost everything? He gently touched my face, wiping away my tears. Because sometimes love isn't enough to overcome hate. And then he left. Through the back door. As if he were a criminal, an intruder, someone unworthy of dignity. That night, I realized there were two people I didn't truly know, my parents and myself. And the question that haunted me was, who was I really? The obedient daughter I had always been, or the passionate woman I had discovered myself to be? The answer would come soon, and it would be more painful than I ever imagined. 3 days. 3 days without speaking to Marcus. 3 days avoiding my parents. 3 days living like a ghost in my own home, going up and down the stairs as if they led nowhere. On the 4th day, my mother knocked on my bedroom door. Sweetheart, we need to talk. She came in without waiting for an answer, carrying a tray with coffee and sugar rolls, just like she used to when I was sick as a child. She sat on the edge of my bed with the care of someone handling something fragile. Chloe, you have to understand that we love you, she began, using that soft voice she once used to convince me to take medicine when I was little. Funny way of showing love, I replied without looking at her, keeping my eyes fixed on the ceiling. Sweetheart, the world isn't a fairy tale. Your father and I grew up in a time when things were different. More separate. Not out of malice, but out of tradition, out of habit. Racist tradition. It's not racism, she snapped, then lowered her voice again. It's prudence. Protection. You have no idea what we'll face if this relationship continues. I sat up in bed and looked at her for the first time in days. My mother looked like she had aged years in a week. There were wrinkles around her eyes I had never noticed before. Mom, you know Marcus. He's kind, intelligent, hardworking. He treats me like a queen. What more do you need? We need you to be realistic, Chloe. That young man might be all those things, but you will suffer. Your children will suffer. There's no place in our world for this relationship. Then maybe it's time to change worlds. My mother sighed deeply, as if she were carrying an invisible weight. Your father secured you a scholarship at the University of Barcelona. 6 months. You can finish your course there, experience new cultures, meet new people. You want to send me away. We want to give you perspective. You want to separate me from Marcus. We want you to be sure this is really the life you want. I stayed silent for a long time. Then I asked. And what if I say I am sure? What if I say I want to stay, fight for this relationship, build a life with Marcus? My mother looked away. Then you'll have to build that life without our help. Your father will cut off your allowance, stop paying for university. You will no longer be welcome in this house. The words fell like hammers on my chest. You'd give me an ultimatum? Him or you? It's not an ultimatum, sweetheart. It's the reality of our convictions. That afternoon, I called Marcus. We met at a small cafe in the city center, far from anywhere we might be recognized. He was different. No longer the confident man I had met at university. He looked smaller, as if the backdoor incident had literally shrunk him. How are you? I asked, touching his hand across the table. Honestly? Devastated, he replied, the word coming out as a hoarse whisper. Marcus, I'm so sorry for everything that happened. Chloe, I need to tell you something, he interrupted. I've spent these days thinking, and maybe your parents are right. It felt like a slap. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe I was selfish. Maybe I insisted on a relationship that's only going to bring suffering to all of us. Marcus, you don't believe that. I don't know what I believe anymore, he burst out, then lowered his voice when he realized people were looking. Chloe, you saw how it was. I humiliated myself, gave everything I had, and still. I left through the back door like a criminal. Tears started streaming down my face. That doesn't mean we should give up. It means I can't keep putting you in this position. I can't be the reason you fight with your family, lose your opportunities, your comfortable life. That comfortable life means nothing without you. It does, Chloe. You just don't see it yet. We sat in silence for long minutes, just looking at each other, quietly crying. So this is it? I finally asked. You're giving up on us? Marcus held my hands tightly, as if trying to memorize the moment. I love you more than anything in this world. And that's exactly why I have to let you go. I won't accept that. You have to. Because I won't keep fighting for a relationship that only brings pain to the person I love most. I stood from the table, furious and desperate. Marcus, if you walk away now, if you give up on us now, I will never forgive you. He looked at me with so much love and sadness I thought my heart would break right there. I'd rather live with your hatred than with your unhappiness. And then he stood and left, leaving me alone in that cafe, crying among indifferent strangers. That night, sitting in my room, staring at the plane ticket to Barcelona my mother had left on my desk, I made the hardest decision of my life. A decision that would change everything. A decision I would carry with me forever. A decision that, years later, I would discover had been completely wrong, for all the right reasons. 5 years later. I'm back at the same cafe where Marcus said goodbye to me. It's not a coincidence. It never is when it comes to destiny. I returned from Barcelona 6 months ago. I completed my master's degree, traveled across Europe, met people, had other relationships. I lived the life my parents had imagined for me, safe, predictable, socially acceptable. And empty. Completely empty. Today, I received news that changed everything. Marcus is getting married. I saw the announcement in the local newspaper, in the society section. A photo of him smiling beside a beautiful black woman, a successful lawyer, with an engagement ring sparkling on her left hand. The headline read, "Young engineer and lawyer announce engagement." They looked happy. Truly happy. And I was shattered. Not by his happiness, Marcus deserved all the happiness in the world. I was shattered because I finally understood the magnitude of what I had lost out of cowardice. I picked up the phone and dialed the number I still knew by heart after 5 years. Hello? His voice was the same, deep and soft, just as I remembered. Marcus, it's me. Chloe. Silence on the other end. Then. Chloe? Wow, how are you? Bad. Really bad. Marcus, I saw the news. About your engagement. Oh. Yes. Thank you. Juliana is an incredible woman. I'm sure she is. Marcus, I need to see you. Please. Just once. To talk. Another silence. Chloe, I don't think that's a good idea. Please. I'm begging you. And here I am, 2 hours later, waiting in the same cafe where we said goodbye 5 years ago. When he walks in, my heart stops. Marcus looks even more handsome, more mature, more confident. He wears a well-tailored suit, carries a leather briefcase, and has the posture of someone who's made it in life. But when our eyes meet, for a moment, I see the vulnerable boy I once loved. Hi, he says, sitting carefully across from me. Hi, I reply, and my voice comes out as a whisper. We stare at each other for long seconds before I can speak. You look well. More than well. You're successful. He smiles, but it's a sad smile. I got a good job at a multinational. Bought a house. I'm engaged to the woman I love. Yes, I'm doing well. To the woman you love, I repeat, and each word feels like a blade. Chloe, why did you ask me to come here? I take a deep breath. It's now or never. Because I made the biggest mistake of my life. Because I was a coward. Because I should have fought for us. Marcus closes his eyes, as if feeling physical pain. Chloe, don't do this. I have to. Marcus, I spent 5 years trying to convince myself that I made the right decision. That it was better for both of us. That you, my parents, were right about the challenges we'd face. And maybe they were. No. They weren't. My voice comes out louder than I intended. Because the only thing truly unbearable is living without the person you love. Tears begin rolling down my face. Marcus, in Barcelona, I dated a count. A real count, with a castle and a title and everything. My parents were ecstatic. It was everything they had ever dreamed of for me. And I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. He kissed me and I thought of you. He talked about love and I heard your voice. He proposed to me and I said no because I knew I'd be lying at the altar. Marcus says nothing, but I see tears in his eyes too. Chloe, you can't tell me this now. Not like this. I can and I will. Because you need to know that there hasn't been a day, an hour, a minute of my life where I haven't regretted letting you go. But you did, he says quietly. You chose your family, your comfort, your safety. I chose to be a coward. And now I have to live with that forever. Marcus leans forward, his eyes locked onto mine. Chloe, do you want to know why I'm engaged to Juliana? I don't, but I nod. Because she loves me for who I am, not despite who I am. She took me to meet her parents in the first week of dating. She posts our photos on social media. She introduces me to all her friends with pride. Each word is a blade to my chest. She would never ask me to enter through the back door of anywhere. Marcus. I loved you, Chloe. I loved you so much I almost died when you left. I spent 2 years in therapy just to be able to move on. And now, finally, I'm happy. But do you still love me? I ask, knowing I have no right to. He looks at me for long seconds before answering. I'll always love the girl I met at university. But that girl no longer exists. She died at the back door of her parents' house. It feels like I've been punched in the stomach. And in her place, a woman was born who chose privilege over love. And I can't love that woman, Chloe. Because I don't recognize her. Marcus stands, places some bills on the table, and looks at me one last time. I wish you all the happiness in the world. Truly. But that happiness can't come from me. He turns to leave, but I call out one last time. Marcus. He stops, but doesn't turn around. If I had been brave 5 years ago, if I had fought, do you think we would have made it? He stands still for a long moment. Then, without turning, he replies. We'll never know, will we? Because you never tried. And then he walks out through the front door, just as he always should have. And I'm left there, alone, finally understanding that some opportunities, once lost, never return. That some wounds, when caused by our own cowardice, never truly heal. And that sometimes the greatest tragedy isn't not getting what we want, but getting exactly what we thought we wanted and realizing it was all wrong. I leave the cafe and walk through the streets of Sao Paulo, a city that has changed so much in 5 years. I see interracial couples walking hand in hand, happy, normal, accepted. I see that the world has changed, evolved, opened up. And I stayed stuck in time, a prisoner of my own cowardice. But something inside me also changed today. A certainty was born from the pain. I will never again allow fear, prejudice, or anyone else's approval to decide for me. I will never again choose what's easy over what's right. I will never again let true love walk out the back door of my life. Because I've learned, in the most painful way possible, that some doors, once closed, never open again. But other doors can open. And this time, I will have the courage to walk through the front door. The greatest regret isn't having loved and lost. It's having had love in your hands, and choosing fear. Stories like Chloe and Marcus's happen every day around us. If you believe in the power of storytelling to transform minds and hearts, subscribe to the channel and be part of this community that's not afraid to talk about the things that truly matter. Your subscription is a vote for the courage to tell the truth.